So Bloober is done making shitty games, they claim. Um, Man, I know I'm a little bit late to this story, but I just saw this pop up on my Twitter feed, and I found the headline fascinating, and I saw it pop up from VGC, so I want to read into it a little bit and discuss this with you all. So it says Bloober team claims it's finished making shitty games. And the article goes on to read, speaking to GameSpot in the wake of its newly announced horror title Chronos The New Dawn, the team behind the recently released Silent Hill 2 remake said that it's looking to shake its previous reputation and emulate the critical and commercial success of Silent Hill 2. We want to find our niche, and we think we found our niche, so now we just let's evolve with it, said co-director Jacek Zebia. I apologize if I'm butchering that. But and then it goes on to say, and how that happens is more complex, but it also happens organically in a way like with 2016's Layers of Fear. People in the studio were like, okay, we made some shitty games before, but we can evolve. We gathered a team that loves horror. Co-director, I'm sorry for butchering this, buddy, Wojciech Pajiko added. So I think for us, it would not be easy to switch to other genres, and we do not want to. So, yeah, I think that the headline there is a little bit more exciting than the actual quote. The quote seems a lot more like they're talking about pre Layers of Fear games that they claim to be shit, or that they perceive to be shit, or at least are acknowledging were not of the highest quality bar. So they're talking about games like Basement Crawl and Brawl, games, 2015, 2014 titles. And so I don't think that would necessarily include games like The Medium and Blair Witch that were released after 2016, after Layers of Fear came out. But regardless, I do appreciate the transparency here. I appreciate being able to look at your games critically and go, okay, some of these weren't up to snuff, weren't up to that quality bar. And I think you can kind of weave your way into a narrative that paints a picture where it's like, they're leaving like they left the Brawl and Basement Crawl era, and then they moved into the Layers of Fear walking sim era, and now as they're quote unquote finding their niche, maybe that's somewhere in the third person action adventure horror game sphere, and now they're leaving behind the walking sim era for Bloober. So I don't think they're outright calling games like The Medium and Blair Witch and Layers of Fear, I don't think they're calling those games shit, and I wouldn't even call those games shit games. I wouldn't say any of them are incredible. Layers of Fear is pretty good. But they're of a certain style. Observer and Layers of Fear and Blair Witch and The Medium somewhat in that same space as well. Just more walking sim oriented titles. But I think that they're in a really good spot right now, because if they are leaning more into making games of that Silent Hill ilk, those third person action adventure horror titles, you're looking at a vacant, just barren wasteland right now. You really only have Resident Evil, because you look at Callisto Protocol, that studio is, what they're working on, like a roguelike now. And I think they also have a bigger game in development as well. But then you're looking at Alone in the Dark, the team that is totally been shut down under the Embracer umbrella. And then, you have Tango, where not totally the studio wasn't well, they were totally shut down, but then they got revived by Krafton, went and acquired Tango, but Tango, the Evil Within IP, stayed with Microsoft. So we're looking at a totally barren wasteland in terms of games that are in that Resident Evil that same ilk, that same style of horror. There's nothing like that. There's almost no AAA survival horror in general outside of Resident Evil. So if this is the niche that Bloober is trying to occupy, if this is the space that they're trying to create their game inside of, I think they found an excellent space with very, very little competition. So, good news across the board there. And I should mention that Krafton is also they were the publisher for the Callisto Protocol. Striking Distance was being funded by Krafton to make the Callisto Protocol, and I remember Glenn Schofield talking about some issues in working with Krafton on the Callisto Protocol. So it's like, shit. Even if Tango wanted to create their own new survival horror IP, which I think they're just going to double down, because I believe Krafton acquired Tango and the rights to Hi-Fi Rush, so it seems like they're just going to be a Hi-Fi Rush factory for the time being. But yeah, that's it. There's no real competition to Resident Evil in this space, so I think Bloober, they find themselves in a really good spot right now. And to continue off of that, this article here from IGN. Silent Hill 2 remake developer Bloober team is open to making more Silent Hill games. So this comes from, once again, Jacek Ziba. I once again apologize. Director and producer on the just announced sci-fi survival horror game Chronos: The New Dawn, alongside director and designer, same thing, Wojciech Pajiko, told IGN the team is open to all opportunities it finds interesting. I think we are always open, Ziba said. If we like the opportunity, we'll take it. Bloober team released Silent Hill 2 Remake on October 8th to glowing critical reception and strong sales too, leaving many fans of the previously dormant horror franchise eager for more. And he goes on here to say, there are opportunities that you have to seize. Pajiko added, like Silent Hill 2, you can remake the legend, so yeah, I do believe that everything's possible. The decision will also be in the hands of Silent Hill publisher Konami, though it is presumably happy with how Silent Hill 2 Remake turned out. Nothing has been announced regarding another remake or full sequel yet, however. So if I'm not mistaken, I think Bloober team is independent. And if I'm Bloober, I stay that way. If Konami wants to throw a bag at you to create Silent Hill 3, the remake, or create Silent Hill 1 makes the most sense. I think Silent Hill 1 should have been remade before 2. I understand, 2 is the big critical hit. But, I think you should have did it in order. Same thing with Metal Gear Solid. Just go 1, 2, 3, 4, do it the way that they were released. But regardless of all that, if I'm Bloober, I don't think I would commit myself to being like the de facto Silent Hill team either. And you see with the Chronos game, the new game that they recently announced, Chronos: The New Dawn, it seems they are trying to make their own mark with that, their own new IP that they can own. That to me is a good sign. I wouldn't totally pursue this Silent Hill direction. Make your own mark, and then if you want to dabble in other spaces, creating IP or working on existing IP for other publishers, all fine and dandy. But make something of your own. I think that is the best play right now, especially with the spot they're in, with the lessons they learned on Silent Hill 2 Remake. If they can apply that to this Chronos: The New Dawn game, while, once again, there's no Dead Space on the market, since Dead Space 2, they have no intentions of remaking that over at EA. So a sci-fi horror game, you have no competition in that vein, and you apply the you iterate a little bit, but you apply those Silent Hill 2 mechanics to a sci-fi horror game, a third-person shooter sci-fi horror game. I mean, you're gonna do just fine. I think you're gonna do just fine. And you proved yourself that you can do it with Silent Hill 2. No reason to believe you can't do it with your own IP. But I do think, once again, talking about their independent status, you got to imagine that PlayStation is really interested in Bloober right now. They just put out a smash hit exclusive title that sold, over 1 million units in a week, if I'm not mistaken, for Silent Hill 2 Remake. The quickest, fastest selling Silent Hill game ever. So you got to imagine that PlayStation is looking at Bloober right now, really eyeing them up. And Sony, they really don't have any survival horror presence at the moment. Staying right there in that vein of cancellations, Days Gone. With Sony Ben now working on that live service title, Days Gone 2, is not going to happen anytime soon. And you can look at Until Dawn, the remake, as okay, that's somewhere in that space, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Like core survival horror titles, third person shooters, third person action adventure survival horror games. PlayStation really doesn't have that, at least not on the horizon, because Naughty Dog is off working on that fantasy game. Well, we presume that they are off working on that fantasy game. They could have two teams, two big teams, one working on the fantasy game, one working on The Last of Us 3. No, we don't know that because nothing has been announced yet, but let's just stay under the assumption that The Last of Us 3 is a ways off. Okay, so if The Last of Us 3 is not till PS6, and you have a team like Bloober, who you're talking about the Medium in 2021, having to totally go in and rebuild Silent Hill 2, and not, it's not like they could iterate off of what they did with the Medium to implement that into Silent Hill 2. So that was rebuilt from the ground up, and that only took them 3 years after the Medium released. And then they got Chronos: The New Dawn that's releasing next year. And let's just say it slips to 2026. I could see that. That you're still talking about a team that can get you a new game every 2-3 years. I mean, that is fucking crazy. And then if you want to look to their past, which you can debate about the quality of those games, but they're a prolific team. You're talking about Layers of Fear in 2016. You're talking about Observer was at like 2018 or so. Blair Witch was like 2019 or so. So you're talking about a team that constantly cranks out games, and they understand the art of iteration. You look at Yakuza, a new game every damn year, reusing a lot of assets, reusing a lot of environments, a lot of mechanics. They understand the art of iteration. Change up something, but a lot of the core mechanics from one game are going to be transferred to the next. You don't have to create this big brand new thing every single time. And then we're talking about Naughty Dog here, a team that is known for, you can zoom in and see the pores on Joel and Ellie's face. Every detail is going to be polished to the finest degree. I ran into countless issues while playing Silent Hill 2 the remake, getting stuck on objects, clipping through environments, like a ton of shit like that happened. These little minor bugs, they did not affect my appreciation of that game whatsoever. And that's the thing, is to get out games as quickly as Bloober and RGG and some of these other teams as quickly as they do, you're going to have those moments of like, that little annoying bug popped up, or that little funny bug popped up. I fucking zip through the world. I fall through the damn floor on this game, and my character's floating around for a second, and then you boot the game back up 10 seconds later, and it's totally an afterthought at that point, as long as it's not happening constantly. But yeah, with a team that can have that type of turnover, games that consistently, that's really, once again, talking about that Resident Evil competitor, that's one of the key defining traits of Resident Evil, is that they understand iteration so well. And they're able to get out games so fucking quickly that Resident Evil just stays in the zeitgeist. And see, I imagine PlayStation has to be eyeing them up right now. And even Xbox, Xbox had that relationship with Bloober for the Medium in 2021, where it was exclusive for like a year. Maybe it wasn't even longer than a year before the Medium came to PlayStation. But yeah, so Xbox has a relationship with Bloober. Right now, Xbox, after they dumped off Tango, they have 0. Well, they have State of Decay over there. So, but totally different style of survival horror. So Xbox really doesn't have anything in the survival horror space. Do they look at something like Chronos and go, okay, yeah, we're not going to be able to get this exclusive, but we'll get this day one on Game Pass? And Bloober's like, we're in this totally independent role, and we're putting out a new IP. We can use some traction, and then Game Pass pays for the development of this. They, maybe throw them $50 million, something like that, to get this day one, a new survival horror IP, day one on Game Pass. Bloober gets a bunch of eyeballs. It pays for the development. If it's a big critical hit in the same way that Silent Hill 2 Remake is, then they enter into their next game with a totally different, they're at a totally different spot on the negotiation table. when they go to talk to a PlayStation or an Xbox or a Konami or whoever they're in these discussion meetings with for who wants their next game, who wants to, okay, fucking, I'd throw out a publisher. Okay, Ubisoft, you want us to come in and remake Cold Fear? Well, here's what we're asking for, and you're gonna pay up if you want us to make Cold Fear. I don't know why my brain goes to Cold Fear, but I do think a Cold Fear remake would be kind of fucking cool. So yeah, I mean, no doubt about it, the Bloober stock is rising. It is a team to watch out for. I would say we're going to do our game awards, our unnecessary game awards at the end of the year. And one of the categories that we do each year is the breakout studio of the year. Each year, like we've been doing this forever. The first ever unnecessary award show was last year, but the second award show will be this year. And breakout studio of the year is going to be something that we discuss on the show, and kind of hard to argue that Bloober doesn't deserve that. You could point out a couple other studios, and I'll have to think about it, but they are one of the breakout studios of the year. The stock is rising, and once again, I was very, very wrong. I underestimated the shit out of this team. They proved me wrong, and I'm always happy to be proven wrong whenever that results in a very high quality game releasing, and that is what we got with Silent Hill 2 Remake, and I hope that's what we get with Chronos: The New Dawn.